All right. So, hello and welcome everyone to our regular conference calls. Today, just so you know, my name is Ankit Patel with Lean Way Consulting, and what we're going to cover today are 7 things you didn't know about daily meetings. And so, first, I wanted to start off by introducing the format of these meetings. Typically, what we'll do is we'll have the recorded portion will be just a presentation, and then we'll take it off the recording and go into some Q&A. So we've got 7 things that you didn't know about daily meetings. So one of the things that I find one of the most powerful tools out there to change the culture and to really get change to happen effectively are daily meetings. And our daily meetings can be anywhere from 3 times a week to sometimes twice a day. So any kind of meeting that you have on a regular basis and frequently. So let's talk about what's typically covered in these. So these meetings are really designed around your operations. So since you're doing them such a frequent basis, you're doing it to control and really to get a handle around very short timeline items. So anything operationally. So if you're in a manufacturing plant, it's maybe your day-to-day operations. If you're in a sales organization, maybe it's your touch points that you've had during the day or the week. So what are some things that to consider, some of the things that you may not know? Well, the number one thing that we find is that the main purpose of the meeting is to understand the situation the same way. So a lot of times people will come to these meetings just to show up. But the real intention and real purpose behind this is to look at some information or look at some data as a group and to say, okay, yeah, we all understand this the same way. So a perfect example would be working at a pediatric MRI clinic. These guys started to have a daily management meeting. And what they found was that what they wanted to look at is one of the metrics were wait time. And what they found was that the wait time was about a little bit over an hour, so they wanted to get that down. What they found when they started having the meetings is that, well, the reason why was that there wasn't proper communication happening between departments. Basically, Department X was, we'll call them the reception area, they were not communicating properly to Department Y or the nurses in the back. And there was a miscommunication there because of each one's perspective. They all saw a different picture of what needed to be done. And so having that communication with each other helped them understand and help resolve the situation. But again, that's the intent behind these meetings. The second thing is to focus on 1 or 2 keystone metrics. Now, what are keystone metrics? These are things that are really important to you. If I asked you what's the 1, maybe 2 things that you have to do daily or you get better at, this would be your keystone metric. Now, we'll say 1 to 2 because too many more than that really gets to be more than it's not easy to manage. So you kind of have to be wary of that. So a lot of times I've seen it where there are 20 or 30 metrics that are things that are being tracked in a daily meeting. And reality of it is that that's not really worthwhile to do. And quite frankly, it just disengages people. So keep it simple. Keep it 1 to 2 metrics. Okay. Now here's one. The third thing is this is interesting. A lot of people may get a reaction to this, either good or bad, but the data and the science shows that you should keep your meetings about 70% positive. And the reason why, without getting too far detailed into it, is that what happens is that people, if you engage in the negatives too much, what happens is that eventually they start disengaging. They start getting into a stress response. And when you put people in the stress response, what usually happens is a fight or flight response. And what that means is that they're either going to shut down, they're going to try to get away from the situation, they're closed off to other options, and then the meeting just ends up being this meeting that no one wants to go to. They think of it as a beatdown meeting or something along those lines. So keeping it 70% positive, and I use the word 70 by 70, so 70% positive, 70% of the time. There are going to be times where the meeting's just going to be all bad news. And there'll be meetings where it's all positive news. So it's flexible, but a general rule of thumb is for every 1 negative comment, you have to have 3 positive comments. There's a lot of good research showing that ratio really enables people to stay out of their stress response. And that really helps people engage and be creative and problem solve much more effectively. So that one fact is probably one of the most controversial, but it's also one of the most critical when moving forward. It will also help you become a better manager or leader if you're running these meetings. So number 4, create a safe learning space. So one of the things that a lot of people understand is that it's not just about execution, go, go, go. These meetings are really designed for learning. Chances are, if you know how to do something, your organization is just going to go ahead and do it. The daily meetings are really designed around, okay, what do we really have challenges with? And that's really when we get to the Keystone metrics. What are the 1 or 2 things that are either really ultra critical to us, and or we have a hard time getting them accomplished? So one example might be, if you're a sales organization, it might be the number of touch points you want with a client. So maybe the number of touch points a week are 3 touch points, either a call, email, whatever it might be. But your teams are having a hard time meeting that just because of sheer volume. So that's one thing that this space is there to help you learn, okay, how can we do this? How can we get 3 touch points with each client every week? What are some other ways and creative things that we can do to do that? And remembering that when you create a learning space, it has to be somewhere where there might be opportunity that you might have to fail a couple of times. You might try some things that may not work out. So keep that in mind, that that's part of this process. Number 5, you should always stay standing, never sit down. A couple of good reasons for that. 1, especially if it's an early morning meeting, it helps people keep awake. 2, when people are standing, they tend to be more productive. Another reason is that people will get to the point. They don't want to sit around. They're not comfortable. There's a little bit of discomfort just standing. So it makes people, and it forces people to really focus on what's necessary, what's needed, and to move on. And so whenever you do these, what I recommend is finding a spot to do these meetings in and stay standing. And usually that spot is wherever you're measuring or recording your metrics. So normally when people do this, they have some sort of whiteboard or a projector. They have somewhere where they show all the numbers that they want to track, and they want to talk about their processes. They want to talk about what's going well. That's the area that you want to do it in. So let's say you're a sales organization. What might be helpful is to do that in what some people call the sales pit. If you're a manufacturer, what might be helpful to do it on the shop floor. If you're a healthcare provider, let's say you're a hospital system, it might be helpful to do it in an area where it's relevant but outside the view of patients. So that way, patients don't necessarily hear and see all the workings of the hospital. So just keep in mind that you want to stay standing, you want to do it in an appropriate location. Number 6 is accept people's comments no matter how uncomfortable it makes you as a manager. So this is an interesting one. So a lot of times going through this process, it's a collaborative process, it's a learning process. Especially if you're the manager or the leader of the department, what's going to happen is that someone eventually will feel comfortable enough to say something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Now, there's a couple things that go on here. 1, you have to determine, does it make me feel uncomfortable because it's me and I just have a reaction to this item? Or does it make me uncomfortable because it's insubordination or the person is being rude? So those are 2 things that you have to really ask yourself before you take any kind of harsh or stern action. So keep that in mind as you move forward, is that you have to be prepared for items that come up that may feel uncomfortable to you. That's a part of the process. It's part of the learning and growing process. People will say things that make you feel uncomfortable, but you just have to understand why it makes you feel uncomfortable. And keep in mind, too, if it is insubordination, you should deal with it, but try to deal with it outside of the meeting. So if you have to reprimand someone, do it on a one-on-one basis. If you praise people, do it in public. So the 7th thing that you may not know is that the meeting times should be variable and no more than 30 minutes. Even 30 minutes is kind of long. Typically what I tell folks is aim for 10 to 15 minutes. And if you get done sooner, great. If you need longer to have conversations, great. Just make sure you allot 30 minutes of conversation time. Again, that leaves you time to have deeper, meaningful conversations around the pieces of information that are important to you. So a lot of times people want very deterministic, okay, this is it. We do 15 minutes, we leave. It doesn't have to be that way. So just keep in mind that you want that flexibility because, again, it's about the outcomes, not the process. You want good outcomes from your meetings. You don't want to just do them just for the sake of doing them. Okay. So that's our call for today, the lesson portion. So what we're going to do now is we're going to stop the recording and we're going to open it up to Q&A.